So you're writing some code, but now you need the program to perform different actions depending on the situation. For example, we've got this calculator here and we want it to perform the mathematical operation that the user decides on. So how do we do that? Let's start by having the user input their choice. We can create a basic little menu here and have the user enter a specific number depending on the operation they want. So we've got our greeting already, and let's just prompt the user to pick one of the following choices. And let's just go through and do the four basic mathematical operations. All right, so the idea here is that the user is going to enter one of these four numbers. So after all that, we can store their input as a variable. We'll just call it op for operation. Just like that. And we'll go ahead and convert this to an integer just to make it easier on ourselves to work with later on. All right, we've stored the user's input, but how do we actually perform the desired mathematical operation based on their decision? Well, we're going to use something called an if statement. We can use if statements to define blocks of code that will only be performed if a certain condition is true. So here's how that works. Let's just get rid of this line here. Not going to need that anymore. Get rid of that as well. All right, to start an if statement, we just type if on a new line. And after this, we have to state the condition. So I'm going to have different code for every mathematical operation that my calculator can perform. So my first condition is going to be that the user's input is equal to 1. So the first if statement is going to be for addition. To write that in code, we use the name of our variable that the user input their decision with, followed by two equal signs and a 1, since we're checking for 1. And after that, we write a colon. We use two equal signs to compare values. You can't use one equal sign. We only do that when we're assigning a value to a variable. So here we have one equal sign because everything on the right here is going to be placed into this variable. But since here we're comparing two values, we use two equal signs. So this is saying if and only if the input OP is equal to 1, then run some code that we're going to have down here. So the way that we're going to specify the code that is only going to run under this condition is by starting a new line after this if statement and having an indentation on that new line. So some IDEs, or most IDEs, should do this automatically for you. See right here, PyCharm has automatically indented for me. But if you're working in a text editor or something like that, you're going to have to indent on your own. So we've got a new line after our if statement, and we've made sure it's indented, and we can go ahead and perform our mathematical operation right here. We can save it in a result variable. Go ahead and just add x and y. And actually, we've got to go back and convert these to integers up here. We'll do it up here since we're only ever going to be working with these numbers as integers. All right, and then we print out the result. All right, now we've got 3 more operations to go through. We could write 3 more if statements, but there's a better way to do that. These operations are mutually exclusive. That is, we're only ever going to be performing one at a time. Because of that, let's take advantage of something called an else if. Python actually shortens it to elif. So we go on a new line, get rid of the indentation, and type elif. And this is basically our way of telling the program, all right, check this condition first. If that one is true, perform this code here. If it's not true, go on to this next else if, this next condition. Then if this one is true, run the code that we write down here instead. So for our second operation, we'll go ahead and do subtraction and print out the result. And we can have as many else ifs as we want for a given if statement. Only one of these is actually going to run. So I'm going to go ahead and write all of the else ifs for the rest of the mathematical operations we have left. All right, we've covered all the operations we want in our calculator. Let's run this and make sure it's all working as expected. So it asks us to choose an operation. Let's do addition to start out with. 5 plus 3, why not? And the sum is 8. All right, that's one down. Let's check one of the other ones. Let's try multiplication this time. 5 times 2, 10. Perfect. Everything works properly, but what if I, as the user, decide to enter some garbage input here? So let's see what happens. By garbage input, I mean the program asks me to choose one of 4 numbers, and instead of doing that, I'm going to type in something that's not even on the menu. Nothing happens. See, we entered 2 numbers and it did not give us a result. Of course, I'm a user and can do no wrong. So now I'm left here confused and wondering why this stupid program doesn't work. As a programmer, we need to prevent user errors as much as possible, or at least give the user some helpful information on how to properly use our program when they make a mistake. So to do that, we've defined blocks of code to run under all of these specific conditions. But now let's define what happens if none of these conditions are met. So if the user enters something that is not part of the menu. At the end here, we can use something called an else statement to catch every other possibility. Again, the program is going to go through these conditions one by one from top to bottom. If it finds one that is true, it'll run that block of code and skip the rest. However, if none of them are true, it'll run whatever code is in the else block. In our case, if our user enters some option that we haven't defined, we can politely ask them to enter a number within the correct range. Or rudely, I won't tell you how to treat your users. Okay, let's check and make sure this is working as intended. So we'll try subtraction this time. Make sure that isn't broken. 5 minus 2 is 3, perfect. Run it again. This time, again, let's try something that's out of the range. It's still going to ask us to enter a number. But this time it warns us to please enter a number from 1 to 4. And now as the user, I'm aware that, oh, maybe I made a mistake. All right, that's if statements. We can ask the computer to run some code only under certain conditions. We define this block of code by indenting the lines that we want to be a part of this block. The program goes through and checks these one by one. It'll run the first one that's true, or default to the else block at the end if none of them are true. Next up, loops.